So I really want this video to be about the figure drawing, but just to go into it really quickly, I do want to give some pointers and tips on, how do you start a figure drawing? How do you exactly kind of have that mindset? So we're going to look at some examples of some artists, of course, but we're just going to kind of brief through this really quick. I wanted to show this example because this shows the idea of wraparounds. Now, what do I mean by wraparounds? Well, so a leg is not just a flat shape. Even if you're drawing something that is 2D and flat, for the most part, you're going to try to imitate a roundness. There is a 3D form. As you can see here, he's kind of thinking of the leg as a cylinder shape. So when the leg is going back into space, the cylinder wraps around this way. The pair of pants wraps around down. But if the leg's coming towards us, right? So now we have this arrow coming towards us. Well, we can start to see things wrap around this way, okay? Because we're starting to see the bottom of that cylinder. You also want to be thinking about volume. So, here we have someone's glutes, right? So obviously this part sticks out further than this part. So you're going to see that shown in the pants that they're wearing, especially, if it's a tighter pair of pants, a looser pair of pants, the fabric is going to react. And we kind of have to just play that in our head. How does it react? Well, the fabric for the most part is going to get tucked under. But if the leg is moving in a direction, right, you're going to have less of a tuck here, maybe more of a tuck here. It all depends on how things are moving. So sometimes it helps, even though sometimes gesture and figure drawing can be quick, to take a second to just kind of think what's in front, what's in back, where's the biggest masses. Now, you might have heard me say this before, but fabric is all about the storytelling. So if we have an element going on, like this person right here, where they are kind of pointing off to the side, well, you can see that it's going to be represented a little bit in the fabric because, again, there's tension, right? There's tension in that person's armpit that we can't see, but we know it's kind of creating this ripple effect. The shirt is reacting to how the person's body is gathering and tension points, right? So you have the shirt kind of picking up over here as it sits on top of the glute mass, right? So these are things you can kind of play with. And you want to be thinking too of how you can show more of a twisting form. So here, you have a standard body on this one, but we were able to show that the body and the torso are twisting just by adding a little bit of a gathering of folds and some of this kind of twisting and tension point drawn fabric folds. Studying and understanding fabric and clothing and how it reacts to the body is something that is as ancient as drawing people itself. At the earliest time when we have started covering ourselves with cloth, whether it was for protection from the environment or just to kind of create some sort of modesty, right? We have been understanding and studying fabric. And you can see here in any depiction, even the Renaissance art, there was great understanding of how these folds kind of interact with each other in these really long and huge gowns that they're wearing. And you can see that they represent us really well. Even here, now we talk about story elements, right? What makes her really feel like she's getting air on this this swing, that she's kind of kicking her shoe off and everything? It's all being told here by the tension created on the dress of the leg over here. And then all of the dress is just like kind of free flowing this way, but there's still understanding of what is happening to the fabric in there. You guys got to remember that this stuff is done in a time when there were no photography, right? There was no photography to take a picture of this moment and kind of study it from there. They had to have an understanding of how fabric and clothes moved when it was in motion. So even in this static shot right here, we're given so much information, right? Of course, the color and the shine and stuff like that helps, but the way the fabric is draped, we already understand that it's more of a silk. We have this inert fold down here that's really strong with this really thick kind of fabric creating these pipe folds. It comes down and then it creates these folds on the ground, but look how simple they kept it. It's really elegant. It's easy to read. You didn't have to go super overcomplicated, right? And then because it's like a nice silk down kind of dress, you have a little bit of tension points kind of displaying the little bit of a twist going on in her torso, which adds a little more interest to the pose. But for the most part, you're just keeping it nice and simple and not overcomplicating it. Another example this leads us to is something a little more modern, but not our modern time, but we have Norman Rockwell here doing art for the Saturday Evening Post. If you guys have never studied this stuff, I highly suggest you go Google or Pinterest Saturday Evening Post, Norman Rockwell, or any of the artists back in this time that were doing art for the Saturday Evening Post. Because not only are their understanding of fabric and stuff really, really well, but just the illustration itself, like it's like almost like this hyper realistic but completely cartoony and characterized people at the same time. It's super beautiful art. But in order to tell these stories, you have to have this understanding of fabric, and you can see here that he had a really, really great understanding of how tension is created, where you get these kind of fold overs and like these half lock folds in here. So just a few more examples of where you can see fabric used over time. Here's another Norman Rockwell. You have a picture of an old man and a boy fishing together. So you can see that no matter what kind of story you're trying to tell, fabric is always going to be a part of it. You can see here that even in those old dime novels, those pulp novels of the past, you know, they were highly sexualized, of course, so whatever your opinion is on that, you can have that opinion. But what I'm talking about here is that these were knocked out so fast, and you can see still how they had such a great understanding of how fabric could add to the story. And it's still used to this day, the understanding of really great fabric. This is a comic called Black Sad, and the artist here, I mean, such a masterful understanding of how fabric works. Look at these interlocking half-lock folds. You have these tension points coming down from the suit. It's really kind of telling of how we have our character kind of hanging, right? He's like slouching to one side. He's maybe over it. And because he has such an understanding of this fabric, he's able to put clothes on things like a turtle, even though turtles don't have this human-like anatomy, but he's able to give it to them. You can even look at the most modern day example right here, where we have a new Star Wars novel series coming out. And here we go, we have a whole bunch of characters that have nice big robes on and flowy clothing. And although they didn't go heavy on really intense fold details, look how simple they kept this drop fold right here. It's just a simple motion like that, maybe a couple pipes coming down. It tells the story, and that's kind of something important too, is knowing when to use less or more detail. So last example here of what artists do to kind of show. You can see just even in this simple example where you don't really have too much going on, we're understanding some of the pipe folds here. And then of course he even comes in and understands that there are the zigzag folds that happen down at the bottom. Maybe like a quick indication of a half lock fold. These quick indications are all you need to have to enhance your drawings, to add to the story, and to really add to the moment of what you're drawing. So all that being said, this is what we are focusing on today. If this looks intimidating, just take a deep breath, because you want to see this as really quick studies of art. Now, you have one of the artists from Grizz and Norm right here doing some figure studying with the character. And just look at the indications. There are not that many folds, but you do see light indications of understanding that there's tension here, so there might be some folds if they were to come back and tighten up this drawing. Maybe a little bit of the fabric gathering here over the stomach area, right? You see that there's some tension points that can come through from here. You're getting a little bit of a gathering of fabric here, and then maybe a little show of some of the fabric that is coming in through here. But for the most part, you're not seeing an overwhelming amount of folds. You're really just kind of seeing a basic understanding. Similar to over here, really this person's just trying to show the weight of the fabric. So you have a little bit of gathering, but we're just kind of showing fabric folds over. This fabric is dropping down, you know, if you can add it in there, add it in there. You know, you got some pipe folds down here. Keep it simple, keep it quick. So for today, I have 4 pictures that we're gonna draw. I have 2 males, 2 female pictures that I just kind of picked randomly scrolling through Pinterest. And I'm not going to take the time to break these down. We're going to have to break these down on our own. That's something that you're going to have to do in your own practice, but I do want to take the time just to kind of let you guys know what I'm looking for when I start these drawings really quick with this one. This will be our first drawing. Now, I see this figure. What I don't want to do is I don't want to get bogged down with the big details first. We're only going to have so much time to do each drawing. So I want to make sure I have an indication of the head. I'm going to maybe kind of give myself a line of where I could see his spine being, maybe an indication of his rib cage in some loose form. But I kind of want to move through my form, understand that there's some tilt here in the pelvis happening, and then I have the weight being down here on this leg. So once I kind of have that set in, you guys understand that it's going in on a tilt, then we can throw in an indication of this leg, and you want to be able to come in now and start to layer on top of your drawing. So, you know, if you have an indication of the arm, maybe nice and loose, something like this, now you get to come in and you can kind of show this tension here like that, maybe add a couple wiggles over there, and you can see that stuff is kind of skin tight. So think of it as like a layering process. What is big? Do you notice this fold? Well, add it in really quick. You see some of these zigzags here? Well, you can add in some of the zigzags like that. Make it really quick. A nice little fold down here, whatever it is. But the most important thing is trying to get the full pose in as simple of shapes as you can, and then start to layer some details and close on top of it. All right, guys, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna throw a timer on here in a second. We're gonna start with two 2-minute drawings. So we're gonna throw 2 minutes on the clock and we're gonna get started. If you guys are someone that panics with time, don't worry, just try to get through this the best you can. If you think realistically maybe you can only get through with the shirt or something like that, since we're focusing on clothes, that's fine. Just try to do a stick figure of the whole pose down to the feet and then come back up and just kind of fill in the details where you can. 2 minutes is not a lot of time. I'm not looking for a super detailed drawing. You're going to see that mine does not come out super detailed either. I'm not good with the quick drawing stuff. I try my best. It's just something you got to practice on a lot. So definitely, if you guys are unfamiliar with figure drawing, you can check out my proportion videos too. I'm going to throw the link to some of the sites that I use for when I want to practice figure drawing in the description below, that you guys can use as your own resources as well. So as you guys can see here, is I'm kind of all over the place. I know I have a limited amount of time. I'm trying not to panic rush, but I'm kind of just throwing in some lines and figuring out where I can kind of put it down. One of the things that I always learned was most important in figure and gesture drawing is just getting to the bottom of the pose and getting the whole pose. What this means is it doesn't mean you have to have everything kind of figured out and set in stone, but you do want to kind of have an indication of where the foot hits the ground, what the other leg is doing, details like that that kind of just let the viewer know of your art, what's going on in the picture, right? So you can see I kind of just threw in a simple indication. I mean, the one part of the leg is just a straight line over there. Here I'm drawing in the bottom of the shoe, and I'm just drawing an indication because that's not my point of what I'm trying to work on right now. I have 12 seconds, so I'm going to throw in an indication of some folds here. I know we got folds, the half lock folds. I see some zigzags coming through there, and then maybe some tension folds there in the sweater. All right, next pose, another 2 minutes, okay? So this one, less clothes to worry about, right? It's all one piece, one attached dress piece. So we're gonna come in and just kind of throw in our figure. So we have a side shot here, so a little bit different. You can really see the round of the back, and then it comes back out, right? The spine creates that S curve, and she's kind of arching her back in this picture as she's looking over her shoulder. So we get to play around with that, and it's a lot of fun. Just kind of exaggerate your pose a little bit. Again, from the neck to about upper thigh there, most of her anatomy is covered, so feel free to just exaggerate it, kind of just put things where you think. So I'm focusing here on the sleeve. Everything on this dress was open and flowy, and I really just kind of wanted to create that feeling. So I wanted to kind of make the sleeve really prominent there. And then now I'm going to come down and kind of focus on the dress. In order to know exactly where the dress is kind of flowing over, I got to find the legs here. So I'm just going to kind of put an indication of the legs down. Now her high heels are kind of giving a distortion. Also, we're looking from a little bit of a lower angle on her, so it's making her look a lot taller than she probably is, but go ahead and play along with that if you want. I left the legs nice and exaggerated and long. Again, it's completely up to you if you want to stylize these or not. Just try to focus the basic anatomy, and again, just get an indication of what you can get in there, even if it's stick figures, and then try to get that fabric on top. So I got my figure in, going to layer in some of this dress, and I'm just going to put it on like that. So, you know, I'm looking for that big shapes, got the bell shape, and then I'm going to come in and just kind of indicate the rest. All right, jumping to a new pose here. We're going for 5 minutes on this one. So take a deep breath. We got a little more time. We can make a little more decisions here, okay? It's over double the time that we had with the last two. So what I'm doing here is I am taking my time a little bit. I want to kind of figure things out. So he's walking. We have a little bit of motion going on in this picture. And what I'm figuring out here is the angle of his shoulders. And you can see I kind of gave myself a straight line down and a ground plane. So this is letting me know because he's walking and he's putting all his weight on one foot in the moment of this picture, that foot is going to be basically directly under his head. So that straight line just helps me so I don't end up putting his foot way off to the side or way over to a different direction. That way I know where I'm going. And I gave myself a loose indication of where the halfway point would be. If you guys remember basic proportions and stuff like that, you know that the halfway point of the human body is going to be right around the groin area. It could, for some people, it's the bottom of the groin. Some people, it's a little bit higher, like middle area of the pubic bone. So that's kind of just like a quick indication you can keep in your head for how not to let your proportions get too out of control. But you guys can see that I did here, if you see that line, that diagonal line that I drew, because the shoulders are going higher on the left side, lower on the right side, the pelvis does the opposite. Okay, so if the shoulders are high on the left, low on the right, then that means that the pelvis is going to be low on the left, high on the right. Okay, all you have to do is just figure out where the shoulders are leaning, because that's going to be the most prominent and obvious, and then you just do the opposite for the pelvis. And so you can see the pelvis, if you look at the pose, is tipping down a little bit on that left side of him as he's walking. It's not too dramatic, but you can really notice it if you kind of take a look. So here I want to get a lot of those tension marks in the suit. So we've talked about this a lot in videos of the past. The style of today is tight clothing. It's what it is. And so what you do is you have a lot of tension marks coming off of different points. So these are pretty fitted to his legs, so you don't get dramatic big folds or anything like that, but you do get kind of like these tension points pulling off of the groin area as he's walking, because there's a lot of tension on that seam that is essentially going from the front to the back. These tension marks also kind of give an indication of what's happening with the leg a little bit. You can see on the right side we have more lines on the top going in towards the hip, and then on the left side we have those lines are going down a little bit. They're going towards the knee. So play those up. Those are little things you might notice and not even think about, but they kind of give a really huge tip to people that are looking at your pictures. All right, so here I'm just kind of thinking of the joints. So at the joints, we have specific marks, right? So the joints are where arms bend, and this is where fabric kind of creates a fabric memory. And that's why we get things like zigzag folds and stuff, right? So I really wanted to emphasize wherever there was a bend, like the elbow, the shoulder moves around a lot. You know, if you're wearing anything longer, it could affect at the wrist. You know, you got the knees, the ankles, the hips, things like that. You're always going to see some sort of fold indication there. So I just kind of wanted to make sure I drew that in. And there you go. So I'm drawing the other side, getting the fold in. Now, I will call myself out on this as I draw in the shirt here. When I'm doing figure drawing, I make two mistakes. I either draw the head too big, and then thank God for digital formatting, because then by the time I get down to however far my canvas goes, I can make the picture smaller and then draw it from there. Or I try to overcompensate for that, and I draw the head too small, as I did in this case. So if you look up at the head, well, now I'm fixing it, but I started off by drawing it a little too small. That's fine, because you can always go back and fix things like that. That is definitely no problem. That's why we always draw light, and we draw simple shapes, and we don't commit to things until we know we're happy with the simple drawing, right? So it was as easy as me just giving this guy more forehead, and I'm happy with it. So always try to keep that in mind. All right, guys, for the last pose, what we're going to do is a 10-minute drawing. So finish up on this, and we'll get going on that one. All right, we are starting here. A little less than 10 minutes on the timer. That is on my bad, but don't worry, it goes to the full pose. It's just me trying to figure out how to do this timing thing in Premiere Pro. But anyways, we have a lot of breathing room here. So we just did 2 minutes. Those went by in a second. We did 5 minutes. Had a little more breathing room there. That was double, a little more than double than the 2 minutes, right? So now you have double the 5 minutes. So what I really want you guys to do, and you can see here I'm kind of gridding things out, is plan ahead. So if I'm in a life drawing session with an actual model in front of me, I do this. I start measuring out a little bit of my proportions. You don't have to go crazy. We're not going into full anatomy here, obviously. We don't have an hour, but we have 10 minutes. So this means I can map things out a little better, and I can kind of plan on a more finished drawing, ideally. So what I did was I just gave myself a quick indication from head to toe, and where's the halfway, and then where's the halfway of those halfways. And this just kind of lets me know where to place things, and then it just makes my life a lot easier because I don't have to keep always double checking everything and checking my lines and where I place things. So now I can kind of play the connected dot game, right? I see that the hand a little bit lower than that first quarter mark, so I'm kind of placing it around there. It doesn't have to line up perfectly with the proportion drawings because, again, we're in the business of exaggerating as we need to. But you just kind of want to match it up where you can. Now, ideally, I should have moved straight down to the bottom of this pose and drawn in the legs. Again, this could be an example of do as I say, not as I do. But I really like the position that we had going on with the arms there, so I kind of wanted to draw in those. I'm focusing a lot on the wraparound of the tight band around the wrist there. And then now I really want to show that fabric just kind of blooming out. It's a really puffy sleeve. So her arm is definitely not that size, right? And, you know, we can see that she's like a pretty petite person, so I know that her arm is not that size. But I want to play up that fabric that is that size. Okay, before we draw in the bottom of this dress, what we need to do is kind of have a basic understanding of where the legs are. So she has a little bit of a wide pose. More weight is being placed on her right leg, but to us it's on the left side. So more weight is being placed on the leg to the left. And then her right leg is a little more spread out. You know this because her leg that has a little more weight on it is a little more under her than the other one. And you can see the other one's a little more up on the side of her foot there, a little bit on the sole of that shoe. Just small indications. This is really like not that big of a deal, but if you guys notice it, you notice it. And again, think about those wraparounds. So I'm looking down at her boot, so we're gonna get more of a U shape of how that boot wraps around her ankle there. All right, so now we're gonna figure out this other leg. And again, I wanna have it kind of go out a little more to the side. So I'm gonna kind of play with that curve of the calf there. And you see, I'm thinking about where these 2 feet exist in space. Sometimes one foot could be further back or further forward. In this case, they're lining up pretty evenly, maybe a little bit on a diagonal, but nothing extreme. And knocking it in. And then we're gonna go ahead and put our big boots in here, just like so. So you can see we have a little more than 5 minutes on the clock. We're about 5 minutes 45 seconds right now, and I have most of my figure in. Realistically, I have the whole figure in. I'm just kind of messing around with some boots right now. So this is a good place to be. I still have more than half my time, and all I have to do is draw in the rest of this dress. And this dress is pretty simple. It's just a big old bell shape with some nice, strong, and prominent pipe folds. So get in whatever details you want. I'm gonna kind of make the boot a little more prominent, and then here we go. I'm gonna figure out this sleeve. So you can kind of see a lot of these like loop shapes. This is kind of just like, almost imagine it as like pipe folds are coming off the sleeve, but then they're being stopped. So you're kind of just getting like a little bit of a loop or a hook kind of shape in there. That's what the fold is creating. And just copy this pose a little bit. And remember, I always have a problem with the head, so I'm going to make my head a little bit bigger, at least in terms of hair room. So give her a nice bit of hair. I like that kind of tuft that goes behind her shoulder there. And I'm going in for some detail on the face. Again, we have time to spend here. So I want at the end for this to look like a little more of a finished drawing than the last three have looked, right? I want this to look like I actually took my time and kind of planned things out. So we can play up that hair. And then we're going to come back down and start to figure out this next sleeve. So remember, puffy, puffy, puffy. So this isn't actually touching her skin. It's kind of floating around, and then it connects right there into the tight sleeve that's kind of keeping it all together. So again, we have these kind of hook shapes coming off that indicate that tight sleeve compression. And these are all just tension points pulling off. And then you can kind of draw in some of these like connecting zigzag or Y shapes in here as the arm bends. We're not getting like a straight half lock shape in here because of the really poofed out material. And then here we have a little indication her chest is coming in front of that fabric a little bit, so we can show that. And you can see a little bit of tension being pulled from where her wrist is making contact with the dress. It's not prominent, but it's just a small detail that we can note, and we got time to note it. All right, so here we are drawing the bottom part of the dress. It hovers right above the knee, so that's a pretty easy point to kind of land on. It flows more out to the left side than it does on the right side. On the right side, it's a little closer to the leg, which again is another indication to me that that leg is really stuck out more than the leg on the left. And you guys can, of course, play this up too. If you want to make that dress a lot bigger, make it a lot bigger. If you feel confident with your underdrawing, make it tighter. However you guys feel. You know, reference is always there for you guys to observe, but you can also break the rules on it too, right? Okay, once I have in my simple shape, you know, if I were to call this a 5-minute drawing, this would be good, but we're still going here because we have 10 minutes. So now I want to kind of figure out the actual details of this dress. I'm not going to draw in every pipe fold. I don't have the time to kind of figure out every single pipe fold on this drawing, but I do want to draw the big indicating pipe folds that give me the information of this dress, that tells me the story of this dress, right? So you can see I'm kind of exaggerating things a little bit here, pushing some pipe folds bigger, making some smaller, playing up the shadows. Okay. Definitely encourage you guys to find what you like about the pipe folds on here and really make those prominent on your picture as well. All right, so just finding a few more tension marks in here. And once I got that in, the outfit is pretty much set in place. We kind of are happy here, so I can go in and add a few more details. Just going for the face there a little bit more. So I like how she kind of has this open mouth look, like she's curious. When I tried to copy it, it looks like she got concerned, but that's okay. I like the emotion that it adds to it. I rather have an emotion rather than no emotion. So. And now what we can do is just kind of focus on our little details. What about this picture, now that you have less than a minute, do you need to finish? Okay, for me, I just want to make sure there's an indication of the face, both eyes on there, and have this be a finished drawing, because I don't need to go in and finish too many details with the fingers or the hands, but having an indication of some of the details here is good. Block in tone around the face for some of the hair. It kind of gives a nice framing network for that face when you guys are doing figure drawing. And last detail, I'm just going to add some tone and some shadow on the bottom of this dress. And then we're going to call it. So we have just a few seconds left. All right, guys, we made it. If this was your first figure drawing or clothes figure drawing session, thank you so much for making that happen with me. Again, I'm going to add the resources in the bottom of where you can go if you want to continue to practice figure drawing, which I highly recommend. It's one of the best ways to speed up your skills and work on your line control. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any suggestions for video series, playlists, or other art tutorials that you have in mind, please let me know and I will work on creating those videos. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day.